Welcome to the session on applied ethics. Abortion, the moral status of fetus. Ethics as a normative discipline remains constrained to deal with the various issues of human beings living in societies. We are living in a world that is visibly different from that of one another, and the difference is much due to the techno-scientific revolution in all the domains of life. This keeps philosophers bring more with the analysis of ethical issues than with metaphysical questions. One remarkable change in philosophers' concern is the increasing emphasis on applied ethics, giving rise to the distinct but interconnected areas of environmental ethics and biomedical ethics. It is widely acknowledged that we are in need of an ethics that can incorporate our obligations too. These obligations transcend the domain of human life to embrace the whole biosphere. Ethics today has also the specific potentials extending to the realm of medicine and health care. But ethical concerns are not confined to humans alone. It considers biosphere as a whole. So, it should be extended to evaluate the double-edged potential of biomedical applications and to prescribe the ways out of their threatening effects. Van Rensselaer-Potter used the term bioethics to refer to a new discipline that combines biological knowledge with knowledge of human value systems. Bioethics is the study of ethical issues arising in the practice of the biological disciplines. It is the applied ethics in the sense that it is the study of ethical issues that arise or might be anticipated to arise in the context of real activities. It deals with the questions of moral dimension and professional responsibility involving all forms of life, issues of medical decision making, living and dying, withdrawing and withholding medical care, conducting research on human subjects, etc. The field of bioethics is not a technique for solving practical problems, but it can clarify the issues. Abortion is one of the controversial concerns of biomedical ethics. In a number of countries, under certain conditions, clinical abortions are legally permitted. But against these court laws, there are moral concerns based on the view that any attempt to destroy a fetus is tantamount to murder because all life, especially all human life, is equally sacred. It must be equally protected whatever the stages of development of the fetus may be. The Hippocratic oath regarding abortion is as follows: I will neither give a deadly drug to anybody if asked for it, nor will I make a suggestion to this effect. Similarly, I will not give a woman an abortive remedy. In purity and holiness, I will guard my life and my art. The ethical debates on abortion ultimately take us to the question of the value of life as it is. In order to discuss about the value of life, it is important to discuss the mother-fetus relationship and the value of fetal life. Clinical abortions are legally permitted in most of the nations, but these court laws are considered as a license to kill. So, abortion laws are considered to be the pre-birth destruction of a fetus, which is tantamount to murder. This view was shared by the antagonists of abortion laws. Their opposition is motivated by the ethical position that all forms of life are equally sacred. Everything in this world has a right to survive and subsist. The ethical debate on abortion is centered around the question whether the unborn fetus is a human individual. In order to analyze the moral status of the fetus, it is important to have a close examination on the concept of personhood and also to define the concept of morality. The concept of a person. In everyday discourse, person means a purely biological being belonging to the species Homo sapiens. There are varieties of definition based on the concept of person. According to psychologists, person means a form of life that have become socialized or having a clear sense of their own identity. A theologian may define a person as any form of human life possessing a soul. Thus, a person can be defined as a being with full genetic code and having the potential capacity for rational thinking. But it is not important to be socialized or conscious at the beginning of a being's life. So, the question is, what makes something a person? There are certain universally accepted clusters of properties attributed to prove the sufficiency of person. These include consciousness, conscious desires, feelings, experience pain and pleasure, thoughts, sense of time, capable of rational deliberations, communication, social interaction, etc. Many philosophers in the area of ethics tended to prove that capacity for rational thought or the capacity for self-consciousness alone cannot determine the personhood of a being. If this was the case, human beings who are adult members remaining in vegetative state cannot be conceived as a person. So, personhood is only a matter of degree. It is not possible to state that all persons have same moral status concerning their personhood. Suppose one has the ability to remember one's past actions and mental states, or having the ability to envisage a future for oneself and to pursue the goals are properties that creates its personhood. It varies according to its abilities. So, the acquisition of personhood is a gradual process. The loss of abilities or conscious leads to a vegetative or degenerative state, but it never degenerates the value of life or affects the notion of personhood. Similarly, the term person cannot be reducible to a socialized being. There are normal adults having human genetic code, but incapable of self-conscious or becoming an active agent in society. As stated above, the concept of person is not confined to certain qualities or of becoming a socialized being, but it is only a matter of degree. So, when comparing to adult human beings, it varies. That is, the fetus is also a person, but lower degree than that combined to a fully grown being. So, the notion of person is not only applicable to adult human beings, but also to the fetus. The development of human life from the fertilized egg to adulthood occurs as a continuum. Embryo, fetus, child and adult are all forms of human life. So, the fetus is also a human species. It has all the physical features of a human life. Here, we can conceive life falling in two categories: prenatal phase and postnatal phase. Fetus is in the prenatal phase. The difference is that fetus is closer to achieve its potentiality than the others. It has the potential to become a person. The potential for achieving personhood and the personhood as it is are both having same value. Fetus is a form of human life, a person or potential person, and thus it has the right to survive. Life achieves personhood. A fetus has the potentiality of becoming a person. If one values personhood, potential for achieving personhood should also be valued. All sort of life has intrinsic value, but the value may differ in degrees. If we value life, it should be valued in all its stages. As a form of human life, the fetus has the right to be a person, but less than those possessed by a being living outside the womb. The fetus is a newborn member of the human species. The potentialities it has constitute an endowment for achieving humanity. So, for the fulfillment of its potentialities, it requires a humanizing environment. Defining the moral status of fetus. The question of moral status of human embryo is not a new question for discussion in philosophy. In the history of philosophy, Aristotle wrote about the development of human fetus and identified three consecutive ensoulments with a vegetative, an animal and a rational soul. In scholastic philosophy, there was proper punishment for abortion. In modern applied philosophy, the question of the moral status of embryo emerged in early 1970. The question debated was whether or not fetus has a moral status. The fundamental question in the long history of abortion is how to determine the humanity of a being. The argument of Roman Catholic Church is that it is wrong to kill humans, however poor, weak, defenseless and lacking in opportunity to develop their potential they may be. It is therefore morally wrong to kill by friends. Similarly, it is morally wrong to kill embryos. This is theologians' criterion of humanity, which was accepted by many anti-abortionists. The term human being means a full-fledged member of moral community and also a member of human species. This is the moral sense of human being. The common sense view is that embryo begins with very little or no moral status and then gradually acquire more and more moral status as they develop. This view was easily attacked by most ethicists as unsustainable from two positions. They are number 1, theory of rights, 2, a consequentialist theory. The first approach is that an entity has right only if it is possible to know that its rights are harmed. Moreover, an entity has an interest in not experiencing pain if and only if it can experience pain, and it has an interest in not being killed if and only if it is conscious of its life as a life. This leads to the conclusion that it does not have any rights until it develops sentience in the fetal stage. The second approach proceeds by arguing that what really matters ethically is preference satisfaction. Since fetus do not have a preference for going on living or having any idea of themselves, it is now wrong to kill them. Proponents of these views states that fetus have no moral status and no intrinsic value because it can come only from intrinsic properties. It cannot occur from its relationship to other entities. The traditional Christian views, primarily the Catholic moral theorist and some evangelic groups, claims that fetus have full moral status from the moment of conception. This rests upon the argument based on potentiality. Potential cannot be the same as logical possibility, since it is not logically impossible for most things to turn into other things. Instead, it should lead to the fulfillment of the potential. So, there should be a stable environment for its potentiality. That is, entity X has the potential to be Y, to entity X now has the moral status which it will have when it becomes Y. So, it is clear that the two gametes have the potential to become a zygote and zygote to a fetus and fetus to a full-fledged member of society. Mary N. A. Warren, one of the opponents of abortion, considers individual as having certain characteristics to the concept of personhood. They are number 1, sentience, the capacity to have conscious experience; 2, emotionality, the capacity to feel happy and sad; 3, reason, capacity to solve new and complex problems; 4, communication, capacity to communicate; 5, self-awareness, capacity to have a concept of oneself. 6. Moral agency, capacity to regulate one's own action. She argues that since these characteristics lack for a fetus, it is not an individual, but an entity that does not have all these attributes can be a person, and none of these attributes is necessary to be a human being. Some may be unemotional, cannot communicate well, cannot reason well, etc. So, this is not only applicable for an unborn fetus, but also for a full grown individual. The main point of argument for those who favor abortion is that sentience is the most basic mental capacity and considers it as a necessary precondition for personhood. But it is odd to claim that an entity that is not sentient is nevertheless a person. Persons who have permanently and irreparably lost all capacity for sentience remains biologically alive, still having strong moral rights. Modern medical science now has proved that fetal sentience occurs in connection with the neurological development, and this occurs at second trimester. One scientific support to argue against the moral status of fetus is to point out the brain waves. The idea is that human brain is a locus of consciousness, language and communication. The human fetus, 6 to 8 weeks, the brain is quite simple and there it functions consciously. After this, the pregnant women feel the fetus kick or move approximately in the 4th month of fetal development. Quickening. The pregnant women can feel the fetus kick or move in approximately the 4th month of fetal development. Viability. Approximately the 5th month in fetal development. Here the fetus is capable for existing apart from the pregnant women. All its organs and organ systems are sufficiently developed that it can function on its own. We can conceive this stage as a new moral status developing because it has the capacity for independent existence. This independent existence is not complete, but viable fetus is sufficiently complete and now it is possible to think of it as a new being. Critics may point out that the viable fetus still depends on others for its existence. It is true that it is not only a fetus, but all human being in one or another way depends on one another for his or her own existence. Another possible positions to support the moral status of fetus are potentiality and actuality. Potentiality means power. According to this criterion, all beings that have the power to develop certain characteristics have full moral worth. Thus, if a particular fetus had the potential for developing the requisite mental capacities, the fetus also have full moral status. Potential cannot be same as logical possibility, since it is not logically impossible for most things to turn into other things. Potential also cannot be mere material possibility, that is, the possibility that a certain piece of marble could turn into a statue of David in the hands of Michelangelo. So, the notion of potentiality entails that it needs a stable environment for its development. So, the potential of the fetus needs a stable environment for the fulfillment of morality. To prove logically, entity X has the potential to be Y and entity X now has the moral status which it will have when it becomes Y. Actuality aims to provide the actual possession of the requisite characteristics for full moral status. This possession is possible when it is allowed to grow and survive in its best possible condition. So, fetal development appears in a grade or level of moral status, that is, early term fetus has less moral value or moral status than the late term fetus. Fetus are morally significant, but the moral status is relational rather than absolute. Fetal development is relational in the sense that it does not have an independent existence. As Toole pointed out, the notion of personhood when applied to fetus becomes something abstract and metaphysical. To be a morally significant category, personhood must involve personality as well as biological integrity. Thus, a fetus is a unique sort of human entity and has a unique physical status dependent upon particular women in its first stage of development. It is person, and when it is born, it becomes a second person. Here, a degree of moral status can also be perceived. Moral status of a fetus is less than that of a fully grown adult, but the lesser status defines its unique social status. This inexorable biological reality, responsibility and privilege of determining a fetus' special social status and value rest within the women carrying it. The first stage of moral development is determined by the women carrying it, and after it is determined by the society. Thus, there is a gradation or level of morality for the fetus. The flow theory. Opponents of abortion claim that abortion is wrong because it involves killing someone like us, a human being who just happens to be very young. The wrongness of killing is understood in terms of what killing does to us. Killing imposes on us the misfortune of premature death. Premature death is a misfortune because when one is dead, one has been deprived of life. It deprives both past and future of one's lifespan. It also deprives an individual of future of value. An individual's future will be valuable to that individual if that individual will come or would come to value it. The flow theory aims to point out the future of fetus, that is, it also has a future like our. Depriving the future of fetus by pointing out that it has no value in society is actually decided by others. The intrinsic value of life is dependent upon that being itself. According to Peter Singer, every living human individual is equal to every other human person in respect of the right to life. This implies that every living human individual must be regarded and treated as a person. Now, let us summarize. Even if we argue the levels or degrees of moral status attained by fetus in connection with the notion of personhood, the abortion controversy still continues. Even if the fetus is not a person, killing it is still wrong. The concept of person includes certain biological factors, psychological factors, rational factors, social factors and legal factors. But the quality of personhood still remains to be incomplete. In the same way, a being who exhibits majority of these factors still fail to be a person. So, there is no clear or single core of necessary and sufficient conditions which we can draw that constitute what really makes a person. So, these features are more or less typical. Being alive is the only necessary conditions for being a person, and fetus have this necessary condition. Whatever conceived by human is a human being, and fetus is a being living and human. So, it is a human being. Biologically, a human being develops gradually. In the same way, moral status of fetus is also attained gradually. To establish the moral status of the unborn by means of rigid theoretical compulsions is not possible because new and complex issues yet unknown arises in the controversy of abortion. Here are some assignments for you to work out. 1. Critically evaluate the moral status of fetus. 2. How much does the process of viability and quickening becomes helpful to argue in favor of the attainment of personhood for a fetus. 3. Justify the statement fetus is a sentient being. 4. Explain the notion of potentiality and actuality in context of defining the moral status of a fetus. 5. How abortion becomes one of the controversial issues in bioethics. Here are some books for your further reference. Practical Ethics, Singer Peter, New York, Cambridge 2011. The Birth of Bioethics, Johnson R. Albert, New York, Oxford University Press 1998. An Introduction to Ethics, William Lilly, London, Allied Publishers 1977. Contemporary Issues in Bioethics, 6th edition, Bisham L. Tom and Lee Roy Walters, Australia, Thomson 2003. Philosophy, Velasquez Manual, USA, Thomson 2005. Bioethics, Silinska Jonna, London, Cambridge 2009. Thank you for watching this session. We will meet again with another topic. Till then, bye.